very close to the wall. Alright. G'day. Welcome to locks introduction, I guess. Apologies for the camera work. It'll probably be shoddy. Hopefully it's good enough for you to see what I'm doing, because that's the whole point of the video, right? Hopefully the audio's fine. I've only got this little lav mic. It's not great. Better than the inbuilt mic on the camera, I think. Possibly just as bad. But, you know, all the people on TV have them, so how bad can they be? Yeah, so this is I'll move the camera around so I kind of jimmy something up so you can actually see what I'm doing down here on the table, because that's not in frame right now. And you need to be able to see. I don't know, I've never really done this before. I don't have a script or anything. I'm just kind of sitting down, trying to look into the camera as much as possible, not look around too much, because that doesn't look great on camera. But alright, so locks. How does a lock work? Well, what kind of lock, really? There's about 1 million types. Yeah, they all work differently. They're all different, and we're going to focus on pin tumbler. So that is the main type of lock that you probably have in your house, and that 99% of locks in Australia are, and probably in Canada and States as well. So that key looks like this, and that's what I'm going to explain. The demo one that I have is this little, this is a cylinder actually, goes in the lock, so in the knob part of the lock, and that's the part your key goes in, and then it turns. And if it's the wrong key, it goes in, and it doesn't turn. But this is the right key. So that's a pin tumbler. There's disc tumbler, wafer tumbler, there's levers tumbler, I guess you might, don't really, lever locks, I suppose, combination locks, sidebar, like wafer sidebar, pin sidebar, dimple locks, which are pin tumbler but not really, combination locks of all kinds, and then there's variations on all those as well. So there's a lot. There's like hybrid versions and high security and blah blah blah. There's a lot of different types. We're going to focus on one, very common. It's the most common because it's the easiest to manufacture. And you know, it's free market capitalism, right? You got to be able to make it for a profit. And they're easy to manufacture, cheap, relatively good security, but not really. But there they are, kind of. But there's some simple things, cheap things that you can do to upgrade the security in them that makes them not too bad. So pin tumbler, that's one. And then the keys look like this, like a key that you would think, hey, that's a key. Your key for your mailbox it looks like this, but it's double-sided, and it's a wafer mechanism actually. It kind of looks like your mailbox key, not really, because your mailbox key will be symmetrical. It will look the same on both sides, which is what we call double-sided convenience, because it's double-sided, but you can put it in either way, and it will still work fine. This one is a double-sided key. It's just not convenient. So it only goes in one way. You can probably see it's not symmetrical. All right, enough of these. These are all very interesting, but not what we're here to discuss. Let's get into pin tumbler. All right. I'm sitting behind the camera at the moment, and let's get into it. So that's your standard kind of key. So what are we looking at when we got this key? Well, you've got spaces and you've got depths. This one is 6 pin, which means there's 6 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 little flats. Now that's the root of the cut, is that flat bit at the bottom. The peaks are called steeples. They don't need to be there for the lock to work, at least. They just stop the key pulling out when it's turned. sometimes. The root of the cut is that flat part, and that's the part that matters. The height of that from, I don't have a key blank with me, I probably should have brought one. But the height of, the depth of the cut is important, and how far along it is important. We've got 6 or 5 spaces. So this one has 6 spaces. You can have 5 as well, it's just, smaller key. And we have 10 depths. So that goes from a 0 to a 9. Now on this key, luckily the code is actually printed on there. So 632545. Now what that means is each number represents a depth, and on the cut. So there's 6 numbers, 632545, and there's 6 spaces, and each number represents a cut. The bigger the number, the deeper the cut. So it starts at a 0, which you can see this flat spot at the top. That would be a 0, but that's not a cut on this. That's just the top of the blank. But a 0 would be up the top, and then so that's a 6, 3, 2, 5, 4, 5. Not much difference between those 4 and a 5. Actually, the difference between 2 cuts in Lockwood is actually, oh boy, half a mil, I think, or about a millimeter, or 0.6 of a millimeter, I believe, which is 0.015 of an inch, pretty sure, or 0.15 of an inch. It's one of those. But yeah, not much difference. So you can see between the 3 and the 2, very small amount of difference in height. The 2 is a little bit shallower, and then a 9 would be right down the bottom. So it goes from 0 to 9, and then 2 and 3, very small difference between them. In fact, I can show you the difference between the pins. So this is way too long-winded. This doesn't need to be this long-winded. For each cut in the key, there is a pin represented in the cylinder. This will be sitting in the knob of your lock at home. So let's take this apart and we'll see what's inside. Alright, so I'm just taking the back off, which you need to do to take the lock apart. Now, we'll take this apart and we'll see what's in. Now, you'll notice that I'm not, now that I've taken the back off, this just sort of slides out. I'm going to have to put this in behind it for reasons that will become apparent. So that's in here, that's there. We'll leave this for now, and we'll have a look at what we got here. So this is our core. We've got 6 chambers, 1 for each of the cuts on the key. Now, if this is the right key, we put it in, and you can see that just gravity alone, these pins are riding up and down on these cuts, and entry and exit ramps here as well. And when they're all aligned, boom, the key's in all the way. It's the right key, so that is perfectly smooth. But we put the wrong key in, and what's going on here? This is keys in all the way, but this pin's sticking up, and these other pins are sitting down in, right? So this cylinder's not turning anyway. So if you think about this, if that's sitting in that housing, this pin is sticking up is not going to be turning. So that's what's going on with this wrong key. Wrong key and the right key, boom. Beautiful, and it works well. I'm just going to show you the difference between two of these cuts. It's hard to show you because it's at an angle. Alright, I'm going to pick the camera up and we'll do it with one hand. So this is an 8 and a 9. Now they're coloured because the difference in size is so small, it's hard to tell with the naked eye. You can still tell, but colouring just makes it a little bit easier. So I probably should have got my tweezers. Oh, I do have some tweezers over there. Ah, they're all the way over there. Actually, no, we'll go get them. Alright, we went and got some tweezers. So, this is an 8 and a 9. The 9's red and the 8 is purple. So, you can see the size difference Really not that much. If we chuck them like this, so their tips are lined up in a row. The tips are lined up in a row. Actually, we'll zoom in. You can see that difference there? The top one's a little bit shorter. That's the difference we're talking about. Very small. In fact, you can visualize that a little better with this. Oh, that's nice, it landed on top. That's a number 2 master pin. Now, we won't get too much into what master pins are just yet, but suffice to say that that is twice the thickness of, this is twice the thickness of one difference. So if we got a 7 here, okay, that's a 7 as a green one, then this is an 8, and that's a 9. Okay, now we line them all up. You can see how they're a little bit, the 7's a little bit shorter than the 8, and then the 9, right? So the difference between that 9 and that 7 is the thickness of this. So the difference between that 7 and 9 is exactly that thickness of this number 2. Not very much difference. So that's the kind of difference we're dealing with. And they're colored just to make it easier. So you got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then the master pins, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They don't do a number 1 because the number 2 is thin enough. And if you got a number 1, that would be ridiculously thin and it would get caught. Those 2s, I've actually seen some of these 2s in older locks that have been worn down. They're actually razor sharp on the edges, and that makes the locks jam and stuff. And so if you had a 1 that was already half that thickness, you can imagine the dramas that you might have with that. I hope this is helpful somehow. I might just have to reshoot bits of this just to do a little summary. You know, hopefully you'll sit through this whole bloody thing. So, the question I guess I was trying to answer, or what I was trying to tell you is, I just get carried away sometimes, I guess. Let's put these back. Is that you need the reason, oh that's right, you asked why do I have all these pins. The short version is this. Basically, the reason for all the pins is this, that in a pin tumbler system, you have spaces, which is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you have depths, which is up and down. Now, if the cut on the key is deep, the pin will be big, because when the key goes in all the way, all the pins have to line up at the same height. They all have to line up at the top of the core. And so if you put the key in and imagine that first cut's a 6, so it'll be down here somewhere, like there. That second cut's a 3, so it'll be up a little further. The next one's a 2, and it'll be up a bit further. So if we get a 6 in that first one, then it sits down nicely. And what's that? 5 at the end. So we put a 5 in the end, it'll sit flush with the top. If we put a 0 in the end, so in that end chamber, oh, where's it gone? It's disappeared because it's sitting way down in the hole, and it shouldn't be sitting in the hole. If it's up, obviously it's sticking up. If it's in the hole, sitting down, what happens is there's top pins. So these are bottom pins, these ones. You've also got top pins, which is why you need this follower, it's called, this plastic bit to hold those in. So in here, if we let this first one come out, see that it's got this top pin. Now that is springy, because it's got a spring behind it. Whoop, flinging out everywhere. So the top pin looks very similar to a bottom pin, except you can see this is how it's cylindrical. So it doesn't have a cone at one end. So, but you've got top pin. If you've got 6 cuts on your key, you have 6 top pins and 6 springs. So let's see if we can get one of these this spring out. Oh, yeah, just tip it upside down. So you have a spring, tiny little thing, and you'll have 6 of those. So that one goes in here. Well, when I actually put it in properly, it goes in. Yep, it goes in there, along with the top pin. And then we get the core. So we got 6, we'll just pin it up again, shall we? 6, 3, 2, 5, 4, and don't forget to take that 0 out, because that's not going to help. 5, 4, 5. Now, if we put this back in here, slide that back in, you can hear those top pins shoot down. Key in, and yay, it works. So hopefully I've answered your question. I hope, fingers crossed.